Sarah Scheist joins me now for another edition of Mortgages and More. Now you're a mortgage broker with TMG on 23rd. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And this time around, we're talking about some of the stuff and some of the steps you really need to take before you go ahead and get yourself involved into a mortgage. Let's talk a little bit about pre-qualification. What exactly is that?
Well, that's the first step in looking at pre-approval for a mortgage. That's where you talk to a mortgage professional. Maybe you run some online calculators. You figure out what your annual income is, what your monthly debts are, and figure out what sort of mortgage payment you can afford. Just a really sort of loose idea of what you can afford to pay for a home, and then kind of start looking in that price range to see what's out there, see if there's anything that you like in that price range.
Okay, but that said, the pre-qualification, I guess, is kind of that whole ballpark estimate. It's not the same at all as a pre-approval. They're totally separate. Yeah. And the pre-approval is really the one that gives you that collateral and that leverage you need to get yourself your home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with the pre-approval, that's when you actually visit your mortgage professional. We'll do an in-depth look at your credit situation. We'll look at your income. We'll review your paperwork. Likely when you come in, we'll ask you to bring some documents with you. You'll want to have ready, at the bare minimum, a couple of pay stubs. If your hours vary, if you work on commission, that sort of thing, a lot of overtime, you'll want to bring in a 2-year average of your income. If you've got an employment letter, if you work part-time and you have guaranteed hours, that's the sort of thing that we'll be looking at. We'll go more in-depth. We'll look at actual real numbers. We'll look at your credit score. We'll explain what that means. And then we'll talk about the different mortgage products, how you qualify for those, what suits you, and we'll kind of work from there to give you an actual real pre-approval that you can then take shopping with you. It gives you a little bit more ammunition when you're going in and putting in that offer. People know that you've been through that step, that we've reviewed all of your paperwork, and it makes you a more serious buyer and puts you in a position where you're able to move quickly when you find the home that you want.
And it makes it so that your realtor, I guess, isn't kicking at the dirt when they realize they were wasting their time running you through a bunch of homes and you couldn't necessarily afford them. Yep. Now, back to step one then, with regards to this whole pre-qualification, what are some of the benefits? I mean, the most obvious one, of course, being you get that general price range. Sure. But because it isn't anything concrete, why should people do it? Well, because sometimes it can be a bit of a reality check, right? So a lot of people will think that they don't want to be renters anymore, that they would like to go and maybe purchase their home, and they have an idea of what that home would look like or what it would cost, and then they can see if what their budget, if the budget fits their reality, I guess, right? So if they're thinking that maybe they only want to spend $700 or $800 on a mortgage payment, it kind of gives you an idea of what's out there, what's available for you to purchase for that amount of money, and whether or not that's something that you'd want to live in. So a lot of times it's just that first step in realizing what that home is going to cost you, and whether or not that's something that you're ready for before you get serious and go through with the actual pre-approval. And that only really takes into account, of course, that that's just what you're paying on your mortgage. That's right. That doesn't include the property taxes and the utilities and all that other fun stuff. But I wanted to jump on to our last point too, which is the mortgage commitment, which is something that you guys are responsible for. Yep. So that's the last and final step in the approval process. So once you've been pre-approved, that's us looking at you as the individual and not necessarily at the house that you've purchased. A full commitment from the lender that we choose involves them looking at everything, reviewing all of your paperwork, calling your employer to verify your job letter, and also looking at the property that you're buying, making sure that the value is there, making sure that it's something that they would like to finance, and actually putting together a legitimate mortgage offer that you will then review with your professional and sign with them if you're happy with it. And your professional should go through that commitment step by step and outline what each point involves and what you're actually committing to. And from that point, it goes to the lawyer, you sign your papers and move in. Sarah Scheist from TMG on 23rd. We always thank you for the education you provide. My pleasure.
Mortgages and More is brought to you by TMG on 23rd. Knowledge, service, experience. Your true partners in the mortgage process.